The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, Simul Radio, Simul TV, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to send me an email, it's very simple, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And if you'd like to find out more about the radio programming that we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the Xzone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. Exonation, my guest this hour is Paul Rimmasch, and he graduated from Weber State University in Ogden, Utah, with a bachelor's degree in forensic science and a minor in photography. He has worked as a crime scene investigator for Weber-Metro CSI for the past 21 years and is a 3-time recipient of the Weber County Sheriff's Office Medal of Merit. Paul has certifications through the International Association for Investigations in Latent Fingerprint Examination and Forensic Photography. He is the Utah representative on the Western Identification Network Latent Fingerprint Committee. Now, Paul's first novel, The Lost Stones, was published in 2011, followed by a sequel, The Lost Mines, in 2015. Paul has also published scientific papers in the Journal of Forensic Identification and Ancient American Magazine, and is also a contributing writer to KSL.com. He is an adjunct professor at Weber State University and is active in the training of law enforcement officers and crime scene investigators. Joining me now is Paul Rimmasch. And Paul, welcome back to the X Zone.
Oh, Rob, it's so good to be with you.
I'm telling you, after our last visit that you had just a couple of months ago, when we were talking about Utah, we were talking about Montezuma's lost treasure, the presence of gold in Utah mountains. We talked about the Aztec records. So many people send me emails saying, well, how come we don't know about this? And it's very simple. Tell them why.
Because it hadn't been on yet. That's how they
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you had a lot of good feedback on it, because it is truly hidden history. It really is.
And as you and I were talking last time, hidden history to me is a crime, because people should be able to understand the reality of our existence, not just as painted and printed by academia.
Right. And it's troubling and mysterious why so many of these interesting things are just kept from us. We talked about it when I was on before. Just have a hard time wrapping my mind around it.
Have there been any other developments since you and I last talked a couple of months ago?
Not on that front. I haven't been doing too much research in that as I'm getting this ghost book and everything launched, and so
right.
I haven't done too much reading. So
tell me
not anything new.
So tell me, what does the paranormal have to do with forensic crime scene photography, investigation, and the ancient Aztecs in Montezuma's treasure.
It's all the wonderful things I've been interested in. So it really doesn't have much to do with the hidden history aspect of it. So I love, that's my favorite thing to research and to study, the hidden history and forbidden archaeology and those things. Those have been a passion of mine ever since I was a kid. I just love that stuff. And that's when I, write my novels and do my research, that's really what I'm interested in. But, I mean, this project that we're talking about tonight, where that came about is in my work in law enforcement and in forensic science after all these decades. It came to me through various times, just talking to people and some experiences that some of my friends had, that this law enforcement is very close to things that are strange and things that are paranormal. We're just kind of walking among them. And probably the thing that really launched it off, well, I guess there's two things. Let me back up. So Rob, you have some experience in law enforcement too, isn't that correct? Isn't that what you were telling me?
That's right. I was a police officer, a police investigator. I worked warrants.
All right. So you'll know this as well. One of the things I enjoy about law enforcement is the camaraderie among the people you work with, and also the storytelling culture.
Yeah.
So as you remember, there's on TV, everything's really exciting in law enforcement and forensics, but in reality, there's a lot of downtime. Mm-hmm. And you're waiting for a search warrant to be signed, or you're waiting for other people to show up with certain equipment, or there's a lot of time where you're just kind of sitting around waiting to do stuff. And during that time, I love the stories that people tell, because there's not much else to do while you're just sitting there than tell stories. And did you notice that when you worked in the business too? Was it just the stories, the rich storytelling culture that existed?
Very, very much so, because, as a police officer or investigator, you have to be very detailed when you write reports, because every little piece of the picture can add up to the big picture later on and where the arrest is made. So yes, when telling stories, we were very colorful. Oh yeah, and it's fun. And some stories, aren't fit for print. Maybe you wouldn't want my mother reading some of the stories that other officers tell. But that's right.
But the stories that I loved the most were stories of weird things that had happened to fellow crime scene investigators and officers.
Right.
And just I love that kind of stuff. I have been interested also in ghosts and whatnot since I was young as well. Well, one incident happened that really kind of kicked my interest in the fusion of forensic science and the paranormal into overdrive.
What was that?
And well, this instance it's probably patient zero or story zero for my collection of stories. And what happened in this is one of my dear friends and colleagues is named Mitch, and we used to work together, and now he's moved on to a different agency where he's a supervisor. But when we worked together, he had something very unsettling happen to him at a crime scene. And this is detailed in my book, Fingerprints and Phantoms. Like I said, it was the story that really got me interested in this. And what happened is, so we had a scene where a woman and her mother were murdered by the daughter's estranged husband. So it was kind of a domestic thing gone bad, and he killed his estranged wife and her mother.
Right.
And at some point during the processing of the crime scene, Mitch was in the crime scene alone with the two victims. And because we were all there together, but sometimes the ebb and flow of a crime scene, more or less people are in there, and you have to go out and take a break or grab equipment or whatever. So at one point, Mitch is in there alone. Well, while he's sitting there, he's kind of kneeling down in front of the younger victim, and as a mental exercise, Mitch said, "Okay, tell me what happened to you." And he wasn't really speaking to the dead body per se. It was a mental exercise. What happened to you? Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
He was just doing it to kind of channel his thinking. But as soon as he said those words, the lights in the house went out.
Oh, that's spooky.
And so he's sitting alone in the dark with two corpses, and for him it probably seemed like an eternity, but who knows how long it was. Well, anyway, after a time the lights came back on, and he was a little bit shaken by this experience, and he came out to where we were standing on the side of the street and said, "Hey guys, did you notice the lights going out in the house or the neighborhood here?" And we were like, no, we didn't see anything happen. There was no power surge or anything that we could see. And so he's like, okay. And he was a little bit freaked out, but he shook it off and then went, back about his duties. And, we finished the crime scene and, went on with it. Well,
right.
In the days and weeks after this crime scene, he started to notice really strange things happening at his home. So, first of all, he had a dog, the breed of pug, and the dog's name was the Dude. He was a very funny dog, a very, very eccentric dog.
Yeah, you know what, Paul? We're going to have a bit of a cliffhanger here because I've got to take my first commercial break. And by the way, I'm holding up a copy of Fingerprints and Phantoms, True Tales of the Law Enforcement Encounters with Paranormal and the Strange, by our guest this hour, Paul Rimmasch. And Paul and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. For more information on the X Zone radio show, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV. Plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
We live in rapidly shifting times of extreme volatility and uncertainty. Such profound change brings a unique opportunity for the evolution of consciousness. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of Mission Evolution Radio Show, a program that explores the latest scientific developments and deepening spiritual truths supporting human evolution. Join me on xzbn.net, where I interview leading experts in science, physics, medicine, spirituality, and more. By applying divergent viewpoints to leading-edge topics, we uncover expansive and evolutionary truth to assist you on your path to enlightenment. More information and past episodes are available at missionevolution.org.
Welcome back, everyone. Paul Rimmasch is our guest. We're talking about Paul's latest book, Fingerprints and Phantoms, True Tales of Law Enforcement Encounters with the Paranormal and the Strange. And thanks very much for joining us again tonight, Paul. Where can people get copies of your book?
So the book is available on Amazon, of course, and then also Walmart.com has it, BarnesandNoble.com has it. So, yeah, if you search my name and the title, Google that, it'll pop up at various locations.
Excellent. By the way, in the front of the book, it has a picture of the dude.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got your copy of the book.
I thoroughly enjoyed reading it.
Well, good. I appreciate that.
It's a great book. Thank you. So, all right, you're at this crime scene, inside your partner or another officer was inside with two corpses, and he thought out loud, and the lights went off. So take it from there, my friend.
Okay, so as I said, the lights went out. He was in the dark for a while. Yeah. He didn't know how long, but it felt like an eternity for him. He came out and asked us if we had noticed a surge in the power or the power bumping, and none of us had. And none of the other houses on the street or even the porch light or anything, we hadn't noticed it. So anyway, we finished up the crime scene and went on about our business. It wasn't really a whodunit case. They had the husband in custody, and so it wasn't a case that we had to just do endless follow-up on because it was, pretty cut and dry. Sure. Well, anyway, Mitch started to notice in the days and weeks after he had gone home from this scene that bizarre things were starting to happen. And the thing that he noticed first was the behavior of his dog. And yes, in the front cover of the book's kind of dedicated to his memory. The dog unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but this pug started to act extremely strange. He would be just sitting there in one of the rooms of Mitch's house, and then all of a sudden his head and his eyes would be following something as if he were watching someone walk through the room, but there was nobody there. And sometimes he would stare up in the corner, and his eyes and his head would be tracking something, and nothing was there. He became obsessed with certain rooms of the house. In the upstairs bathroom, for whatever reason, he would go up there, and he would just bark, and he was just really obsessed with it. And Mitch just didn't know what to make of this. He's like, what's wrong with this dog? What is going on here? He's acting like he's out of his mind. And then Mitch started to notice electrical anomalies in his house. The power in one particular room would go out, and he would check the fuse, and everything seemed fine, and the power would come back on, or his alarm clock would suddenly not be working, or other things. He would start to notice other electronic, like I said, anomalies. Well, he's not really putting this all together at this point. He's just noticing these random weird things, but then one day he started to date a new gal, and she came over to his house, and this lady was an intuitive. For her, the veil was thin. She could feel spirits and different things like that. And so as soon as she walked in Mitch's house, she's like, oh, wow, you have a ghost here. At that point, Mitch is like, oh, that might explain a few things. And so they started to talk about it, and with what the girl was feeling from the spirit and the things that she was asking Mitch, they eventually figured out that it was this girl who had been murdered by her husband. Wow. And that when Mitch had spoken aloud to her, she had latched onto him somehow and followed him home from a crime scene. And when we found that out, when he told us this story and we kind of put it all together, we were pretty shocked, because as crime scene investigators, you're always worried about what you're tracking into your house on your boots, right? The things that you walk through at crime scenes. You take your shoes off before you go in, or some people pull into their garage and totally strip down before they walk into their house. I have a detached garage, so the neighbors probably wouldn't appreciate if I did that. But we're always worried about bringing contamination into the house. Mm-hmm. But for the first time, we were like, what is following us home? And so this really piqued my interest in that link between the paranormal and crime scenes. And it's funny, the more people I've talked to over the years, as I've collected stories and told people about this project and different things, it's happened to other people that spirits have followed them home. And so this isn't, what happened to Mitch and the dude are not isolated instances.
One of the other stories that I thoroughly enjoyed reading was Who You Gonna Call? And I'd just like to read a bit of it for our audience. To say that I've been in a few surrealist situations in my career would certainly be an understatement. In fact, there may not be more surreal profession in the entire world than law enforcement. Much of it involves being in a scene of graphic violence and not being particularly shaken up by it. I think one of the example where two of my comrades and I passed what we were doing to watch the scene from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where the two heroes make their famous jump into the river. What is so bizarre about three co-workers, you casually watching a bit of television, you may ask? Well, there was an unfortunate soul at our feet who had been stomped to death, and the big screen television we were watching was covered with his blood. It was a very nice cast-off pattern, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that kind of shows a bit of a sense of humor, but you need
well,
it.
I hoped that there were some funny elements of the book too, not just creepy. But
no, but you need it in your profession. Crime scenes, the majority of times, are very graphic. They're very violent. They are the result of a dark side of humanity that very few people want to admit exist, and yet people like yourself, crime scene investigators, see it all too often.
Yeah, that's right. And we're even different than the police officers in the way we have to approach a scene like that, because a lot of times the first responders, the patrol officers they might find a scene like that. They'll be the first ones to go in there and find the body and find the horrific scene. But then they pull out and call in crime scene, and then they're kind of done. So, I mean, they had I always say they had kind of the acute stress of going in there and seeing something horrible, but then they can back out. But crime scene people, the forensic people, we have to go in to that scene then and spend the next hours, days, or even weeks in that horrible scene. And so we have kind of a more chronic variety of stress where you're seeing that horrible scene over and over and over again for quite a long period of time. And so, yes, it is very, very trying on the soul.
What was your second favorite story in your book?
Oh, my second favorite story. That's hard to say because I love all those stories. They're like my children. But I think one of the most interesting stories involves a lady that had passed away in her trailer park. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, I found that she and all of her possessions were covered with mold. Oh. And did you read that far? I think it's chapter 9, that particular story.
I've got a bookmark where I stopped. The Note.
Yes.
One of the most peculiar aspects of crime scene work comes from the fact that we spend a lot of time driving around town, and that once we go into a house, we may not leave it for a while. Those two facts, in and of themselves, are not peculiar, but it is the combination of the two that is. Mold. What kind of mold was it? Was it black mold? Was it the...
Well, no, it wasn't. It wasn't the black kind of mold. It was the green bread mold. Oh. And it was really weird because I go in there and she was in this little single wide trailer, mm-hmm. and the bathtub or the sink had been leaking, and so the carpet was saturated, and when you stepped it made the sound, and everywhere was this thick green mold, including her. And what was really weird and creepy about the case is that we went in and worked, and there was cobwebs everywhere, and there was porcelain dolls covered with mold and cobwebs, and it was just dark and gloomy. None of the lights worked. You just had this feeling of doom and gloom when you were in there because it was just so dark. Your flashlight barely penetrated the murk.
Wow.
Because of all the mold and just everything. But what was bizarre is at the end, we went in and took our pictures and did the investigation, and it just looked, she was probably in her 80s, late 80s, and she was just laying in bed. Looks like she had peacefully passed away.
And we have to have another cliffhanger as we go to our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation Paul Rimmasch is our special guest. And the name of his new book is Fingerprints and Phantoms. It's available at all online bookstores, as well as selected brick-and-mortar stores. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Paul and I will return on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Exonation, Paul Rimmasch is our special guest, and we're talking to Paul about his new book that is out called Fingerprints and Phantoms, True Tales of Law Enforcement Encounters with the Paranormal and the Strange. Some of the chapters titles are Chapter 1, The Answered Plea, Number 2, Parked Cop, Number 3, Who You Gonna Call, Number 4, The Fifth Floor, Number 5, Gone Fishing. Some others include The Note, The Empty Chair, The Dog and the Sock, The Missionaries, The Black Veil. There's 26 chapters here, Exonation. An ideal gift for anyone who is into true paranormal stories. Again, Paul, thanks very much for coming on the show. But continue the story about the 80-some-odd-year-old lady that was found in her trailer. There was no power. The carpet was soaked, and the entire place was covered with green mold. Yeah, and so, like I said, we went in, we did our investigation. Nothing looked out of place, as much as you could tell in a place like that, but nothing looked like it had been disturbed in a recent struggle or anything. And she was just laying peacefully in her bed. There was no signs of struggle, and so we, couldn't find anything to indicate that there was any foul play involved. Obviously, toxicology and autopsy still needed to be done, but we were pretty much satisfied that, we just had a natural causes death. But as I was getting ready to leave, it's my practice to do a final walkthrough. It's a really good idea once the body has been removed and you think you're done, just to go take another look in the crime scene and make sure you didn't miss anything. Right. And as I did that, I was looking around, and I noticed that on her door there were a lot of old newspaper clippings and little drawings and different things, the kind of stuff people put on their refrigerator or door, something like that. But there was a piece of paper that seemed out of place. It wasn't as old, and it wasn't as yellowed, but it was, the corners were turned down on it. And so I was curious and wondered what it was. So when I spread the paper back, I read something on the note that really shocked me, and I still don't know what to make of it to this very day. And on the note, it was written by hand, the words, "Who or what are you?" And I was like, oh, what is she talking about? Who is she talking to? Like, is she having some visitor, or is she seeing something or hearing something, or what? Like, I'm just so perplexed. Like I said, to this day, even though this was years ago, what did she mean by who or what are you? Wow. And yeah, I was creeped out then, and I still am today when I think about it. As a trained law enforcement crime scene investigator, an expert witness, a professional photographer, as well as a crime scientist, what do you make of the paranormal? How do you explain it? Can it be explained? Well, that's a really good question, because sometimes people have asked, and I've even wondered myself sometimes, is there a conflict of interest, or is it not really proper for me to be interested in these things because so many of them can't be proved? Or, all the paranormal, you really can't prove it by science. And the way I look at it, though, is I don't really have any qualms with my interest in it because of the way I was trained to think. And this is an important aspect, I think, for anyone who's doing research in forbidden subjects or paranormal or UFOs or cryptids or whatever. You have to think this way, but this is the way a crime scene investigator should think. So the way kids are taught in school to think is the scientific method, where you have a theory, and then you flesh that theory out a little bit, and then you do some experiments and to test that theory, and then at the end of your experiments, you've either proved or disproved that theory. And like I said, that is the scientific method, and that is really pushed upon, in our education system. The trouble with that approach, the trouble with the scientific method, is
and I think we talked about it before, was the concept of anchoring. If you've had this theory that you've been working on trying to prove for 10 years, and it's your PhD thesis and all these things, you are going to become anchored to that theory, in that any information that comes along that might not fit that theory, you are going to either ignore or try to spin or something like that. But any good investigator, whether that's a police detective or a crime scene investigator or whatever, any good investigator doesn't have a theory first and then try to prove or disprove that theory.
No.
They have a more bottom-up approach to knowledge, to the acquisition of knowledge. And I was taught by my mentor, Russ Dean, to think this way, and he was the master of it. He would go into a crime scene, and he wouldn't have a theory right away. He wouldn't say what he thought happened. He wouldn't even entertain those thoughts. He was in evidence-gathering mode. He would look at one piece of evidence, see how it fits to another, and see how it fits to another, and he would analyze the individual events and slowly build the knowledge from the bottom up. So instead of the top-down scientific method, he taught us to think from the bottom up. And then eventually, once all the information in the entire scene was gathered, he would then say what he thought happened, and that guy was never wrong. And it was amazing, and it was because of the way he gathered knowledge. And so when I look at some of these things that have happened to me or my friends or different colleagues, there's just some things that I can't instantly dismiss or just cast out as ridiculous. And the office we have is a really noisy building. It has a metal roof, and so when it heats or cools, there's lots of pops and groans and different things. And so a lot of my coworkers are like, "Oh, did you hear that? Our office is haunted." And I'm like, No, that's the roof. I'm actually pretty skeptical when it comes to some of these haunted stories. But another story, and it's in the book, I can't remember which chapter it is right now, but another story that happened to me early in my career, I can't explain what went on. I can't dismiss it. I can't look at the events and find any other explanation for it. And so what happened in this instance is it was another case where a husband killed his wife. They were a pretty young couple. They were getting a divorce, and it looked like it was going to be kind of amicable, but then all of a sudden he decided if he couldn't have her, nobody could, and he brutally killed her. And it was in this little apartment in one of our smaller cities up here in our county, and he had chased her down the hall, and she had gotten pinned against the bathroom door. And this door was outward opening, and so we're pretty sure she was trying to get into the bathroom and lock herself in there to get away from him, but because the door opened outward instead of inward, she got pinned against it and couldn't get in the bathroom, and she was killed right there, pinned against the bathroom door. And so this was actually one of my first pretty gruesome crime scenes that I had worked. I had only been on about a year at the time, and it was, a good scene forensically. We, collected a lot of good evidence and made some good inferences and really helped the case along, and, we were pretty proud of our work on this. Well, a year or so later, the apartment had been cleaned up, re-rented out, and some new people were living in it. And these people had no idea what had gone on. They'd heard some vague rumor that in the apartment complex somewhere someone had been murdered, but they didn't know that it was in their unit. And so one day an officer came to their house for something completely unrelated. It was nothing to do with a homicide. He was taking a noise complaint or something like that. It was just, a pretty minor police matter. Well, at the end of it, the people, there was a man and a woman, the wife said to the officer, "Hey, did somebody get murdered in these apartments?" And the officer was like, "Well, yeah." And she said, "Well, which unit was it?" And the officer, who'd actually helped work on the case, he said, well, are you sure you want to know? And the lady's like, well, yeah, I want to know. And he said, well, this one. And the husband at the time was watching TV, and he said, oh, that explains a few things. And they seemed satisfied with the answer, and they were just going to go about the rest of their day. But this officer was interested. His interest was piqued by this whole conversation, and so he said, well, if you don't mind me asking, why did you ask those questions?
All right, and we're going to have another cliffhanger here, the final one for this hour, Paul. We got to keep them wanting more, you know that, eh?
All right, sounds great.
That's right, Paul. Paul Rimmasch is our special guest, X Zone Nation. He is the author of Fingerprints and Phantoms, True Tales of Law Enforcement Encounters with the Paranormal and the Strange. And Paul's book is available online at Amazon and other online book retailers, as well as brick and mortar stores. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Paul and I will return after we hear some words from our fine sponsors. Don't forget, the X Zone radio TV show is now on the X Zone TV channel on SimulTV, www.simultv.com. Don't go away.
Now watch it on SimulTV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is SimulTV. SimulTV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. SimulTV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have SimulTV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howell expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
The concept of a new age has been around since the late 19th century, yet much of its original meaning has been lost. What exactly is the new age? Is it a religion, a collection of obscure esoteric practices, a series of doomsday predictions, or an astrological event? The New Age Chronicles is a unique, complementary publication bringing reason and grounded information to separate fact from fiction. Chock full of valuable information to support you as we make the monumental shift into the new era. You won't want to miss a single innovative issue. The New Age Chronicles newspaper is coming soon to www.newagechronicles.com.
All right, Paul, we've got this police officer who's responding to a noise complaint, basically. He goes to an apartment where the occupants, the apartment where they live, was the scene of a gruesome crime. The lady or the man asked where the apartment was, and the officer said, "Do you really want to know?" And the officer told him it was their apartment, and the man said, "Well, that explains a few things. Take it from there."
All right, so yes, he says, well, that explains a few things, and then just goes back to watching TV. And like he was satisfied with the answer, and the matter was closed. But the officer who had been on the original crime scene, the matter wasn't closed for him, and he said, well, if you don't mind me asking, what do you mean? And they said, oh, just some strange things happen in our apartment every now and again, like the bathroom door will open by itself, and the light in the bathroom will turn on by itself. And when they told this officer that, he having been to the scene and having firsthand knowledge of where the woman was murdered, he said he felt the blood drain out of his face, because this was specific knowledge.
Yeah.
This was something that hadn't been put out in the media. It wasn't in the paper. There was no way that these people could have known about this door. And the door was crucial. She, like I said earlier, she was pinned up against the door, murdered right there. And it was as if in death she was trying to get that door open, the thing that she couldn't do in life. And so when I hear a story like that, where there's really very specific information that just they couldn't have randomly thought of that, it just leads me to believe that there's something going on. So sure, some weird ghostly or paranormal things people are hallucinating or having maybe some mental challenges with. Some things that people see are misidentifications, or they want to believe, or whatever. So we can explain away a number of things through those means. But there are things like this story that I can't explain away. And so something is happening. What exactly it is, I don't know. I don't pretend to be a paranormal researcher that has great theories about why this stuff's going on. I'm a storyteller and a story collector. But something is happening. Something has happened for, it appears, all of human history. People have been having paranormal experiences all over the world. Something's going on. And just to dismiss it out of hand because there's no tidy scientific explanation for it, I think is disingenuous, because something is happening to people and you can't explain everything away.
As a trained professional and as a crime scene investigator, how would you approach investigating a paranormal event?
How would I approach it?
Yeah.
I would probably run the other way because I'm kind of freaked out by it. I've never really fancied myself as an investigator like that. But, I guess if I was forced to do it, I would try to, gather as much hard evidence as I could, either with gathering EVP recordings or using some different types of photography like infrared or ultraviolet, try to catch something like that. I would probably try to approach it technologically like that.
I remember when it was night patrol, I used to love working nights. I'd start at either 8 at night to 8 in the morning or midnight until noon the next day.
Oh.
And when we had to do the church checks, secure, see if the churches were secure or not, going through the graveyards at night to the church on a moonlit night, was no problem. But I'll tell you something, when it was raining with those cracks of lightning and the boom of thunder, the mind plays tricks on you.
Yes, it can.
It can. The other officers that you work with, I'm sure they also shared stories with you. What do your superiors say about your book and the way that it's been accepted by not only law enforcement members but by the general public?
I think most of my superiors that know about it have been very enthusiastic about it.
Excellent.
I haven't really received any negative feedback. I got a text message the other night from the chief prosecutor of our county who said he had just barely got a copy of it, was excited to read it. And so, I think I haven't had any negative feedback on it. And what's interesting is I think most people in this field have had themselves, or at least heard about, some strange occurrences happening like this. And they might not be forthcoming with the information at first, but as you talk to them, they'll tell you. And a couple years ago, we had a forensics conference for our local forensics agency, and it was around Halloween time. And so they wanted to do a little bit of a Halloween theme for the banquet. And so my book hadn't come out yet. It was, like I said, a couple years ago, but they knew it was in the works, the organizers. And so they invited me to put together a little presentation and speak about some of the stories that I'd collected. And presentation went really well. Everybody was excited about it. And then the organizers of the event opened up the mic at the end and said, "Hey, has anyone else had kind of a weird experience that they would like to share?" Well, you could have heard a pin drop in the room. Nobody was really rushing up to grab the mic to talk about it. And so, after a minute of no one coming up, they closed the meeting, and then everyone went back to eating. And so I just went out and afterwards and started to work the tables and talk to the people and just say hi to friends and colleagues. And it was funny, even though nobody was forthcoming during the open mic section, every single table I visited had a story or two that had happened to people. Like they didn't want to tell everybody the story, but when they knew it was kind of a safe environment with me alone, one-on-one, they were more than forthcoming. And like I said, every table in that room had someone who'd experienced something strange. And so I think it's very common.
The reaction of your family, how's that been?
Oh, they probably get tired of hearing me talk about it. But yeah, they're excited too. I mean, they love my stories. I think my kids have always enjoyed me telling stories, and they accuse me of exaggerating, but the stories in this book are straight. There's no exaggeration, but they love my stories. It's been a lot of fun.
How has the writing of the book, the collecting of stories, has it changed your opinion or the way you look at the paranormal?
Well, it hasn't changed my opinion, but it's given me a lot to think about, because it seems you can kind of clump different, or you can clump the paranormal into different categories that might be some sort of explanation for them. You have kind of the restless spirit paradigm that we talked about with the girl latching onto Mitch and following him home.
Right.
But there's also a paradigm where sometimes when people die, they visit their relatives who don't know they're dead yet and say goodbye to them. And these people either experience it a dream, or they wake up and find grandma or somebody standing at the foot of their bed, and they talk to them, and then the next morning when they wake up, they find out that she had died. And then there's a third category that is very bizarre, and I'm not even sure what to make of it, because it appears sometimes that some of these hauntings might be a slice of time that has been captured or recorded by a place. And what leads me to talk about that is there are multiple members of my own crime scene unit who have heard my voice at the office when I was not there.
Wow. That's interesting.
And, go ahead.
No, I said that's very interesting.
It is. And it's like I'm haunting my lab, but I'm not dead yet. And so what is that? Like, one of them was in our records room at about 2:30 in the morning, and I wasn't working. I was home asleep, and she was putting some files away, and she heard my voice clear as day behind her say her name. And she thought, oh, what's Paul doing here? And she turns around, and I'm not there. And another one of my coworkers heard me sneeze one time. I have a very distinctive sneeze. And she heard me sneeze from her office, and she thought, oh, what's Paul doing here? And walks out. I'm nowhere. I'm not even there. And so, they tell me these stories, and I'm like, well, I think I'm alive.
Well, you sound alive. You sound alive to me, Paul.
And
yeah,
so,
I hate to do that. I hate to do this, Paul, but we've got to say so long for tonight. We're going to have you back on, as always. You're more than welcomed here. Congratulations on a great book, and just keep on trucking, my friend. And when you're out there doing your job as a law enforcement officer, be careful.
All right. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on with you tonight.
Take care, Paul. Exonation Paul Rimmasch has been our guest. He is the author of Fingerprints and Phantoms, True Tales of Law Enforcement Encounters with the Paranormal and the Strange, available at all bookstores, including Amazon.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.